Sorry about that. For whatever reason, my PC just decided to shut down on me. Like, I guess there was a problem and they had to do a restart or whatever it was. So, so yeah, unfortunately, we can't just continue streaming. It's got to be brand new stream, I guess. We'll do a part two or whatever it is. So, here we are again. And yeah, like I was saying, like when you got your chance in high school, you go for it. Go for it. Got nothing to lose, everything to game, and a lot of fun to be had. A lot of fun to be had. So, but I personally think that, some people, you talk to some people and they don't see high school as such a big deal. And then you talk to some other people and high school was a special time in their life. And then you talk to some other people and it was meh. It was like, so and so, like a lukewarm experience or whatever you want to call it. Um, but looking back at it, high school was very interesting, and it would have been, granted, if things were a little bit different, it would have been an even better time and all that. But ultimately, for me personally, as an adult now, one of the things that I absolutely love is like I was lucky for the most part. The first half of my childhood was easy and a dream, and then the second part of my childhood was, were financially in trouble, my family and I, right? So there were a lot of hardships and stuff like that, which had an impact on school life as well, especially in high school. We didn't I didn't have my family was probably the poorest family in the entire school, actually. So um ultimately, uh there would be a lot of things going on. I wouldn't I wasn't driving at the time. I didn't drive in high school at all. And if things were just a little bit different, or if I met my best friends a little bit earlier and stuff like that, high school would have been even better. It would have been even better and more rich. But at the same time, I still appreciate it. I really appreciate it for what it was, because um, how do I put this? I apologize. I have uh, I'm having difficulty trying to explain like what I'm thinking. I apologize. I usually don't have a problem with that, but there's a lot of feelings when it comes to high school. A part of me says that I wouldn't change a thing, and then a part of me says, yeah, I would have done this differently, or done that differently. And one thing I can tell you, for any of you youngsters that are listening to this, if there's anybody that's listening to this, is like, um, I would have been more communicative with. I wouldn't have held myself back so much when it came to like girls, because I was really shy around girls, like specifically girls that I liked, and I saw them as, these like larger than life type of people, and I didn't consider myself an equal, right? Which was a very bad mentality to look at. So, um, yeah, George Leah, this I hadn't seen this movie in years either, and it's a great film. And at this point, we're like in the last 30 minutes of it or whatnot, and then my computer just shut down on me, and I just got back on. Thank you for the like, by the way. But yeah, Not Another Teen Movie was awesome, and it really just took from American Pie's success, because American Pie was like a rated R high school movie that just took the world by storm, and every other teen movie was like a PG-13 type of movie and stuff like that. And although they were good, American Pie hit differently because it was rated R, and it showed you, it really like displayed that other side to high school movies. And then in 2001, this movie came out. So, um, where they just literally just went completely like you know, balls to the wall, with literally everything. And then of course Chris Evans is there, the Captain America, and then you got your, you know, you got everybody just mocking all the different characters from all the different movies. They even you remember the high school movie She's All That? Remember that, George? Uh, they recently made a movie He's All That, to where the roles are reversed, and I saw it recently because it's on Netflix, and it's not that bad. I mean, it's obviously 20 years later or whatever it was, or much later. However, the cool thing is that the girl that played the geek that they made pretty, she was actually in that movie. She plays one of the characters' mothers, one of the main characters' mothers in that film. So you see her all these years later, and she still looks amazing. She looks incredible. Um, so yeah, Rachel Lee Cook is her name, and she reprised her role once again. Well, I think, well, I don't know if she quote unquote reprised her role. I have to kind of look at the credits, but regardless, there's just looking back at high school movies now, it just it kind of makes you wonder in terms of you know when you were in high school, like what I was talking about earlier before you came into the chat. um I I was talking about how, like, back in my day, and I graduated in 2003, and back in my day hair gel was like a big deal. There were still a considerable amount of kids that were wearing hair gel. I was one of those kids, and uh and it was I would wear hair gel like all the time. And with the jeans and all, the slightly baggier jeans, and the what was it, the K Swiss shoes were like the high school shoe to wear, I guess. So you had your um you had your slightly baggy jeans, you had the K Swiss, and then you had the hair gel and all that. I mean, that was like the style back then. And then this guy over here gives chick. I remember Chris Evans being funny. Yeah, he was funny. He was funny as Human Torch, and he was also funny in this film. If you could be funny and if you could be dramatic, you've got it all, in my opinion. So, and then this chick right here gets the letter, and she's like, "You think you give me this letter, I'm just gonna sleep with you?" And he's like, "No, no, no, that's not at all. Like, what do you think I am, some kind of cheap slut? I don't screw every guy that gives me a letter." And she's like, "I give him hand jobs." And he's like, "Huh?" And then he's like, "What? No way." But yeah, back in the day, man, it was I don't know about you, but uh back in my high school day, it was like, hair gel was a thing. Like, at least half the kids in high school use hair gel. So, like, did you play football in high school? Did what was your high school like? Were you in the middle of the pack in terms of, popular or unpopular, or did you hang out with a crowd? Did you not hang out with a crowd? What was high school like for you? I graduated in '03, in 2003, so I don't, middle? Yeah. Yep, I was somewhere in the middle as well. I could pretty much hang out with anybody. I could have a conversation with anybody, hang out with everybody. So, yeah, I was pretty much in the middle as well. Did you go to prom, or did you skip out on prom? Because I always ask that question to anybody that, whenever we have a conversation about high school. It's like, did you go to prom? So I was pretty. It was a pretty good left school in 1992 in the UK. We didn't have proms, but we do now. Ah, okay. That was one thing that I was also mentioning, was that I don't know how high schools are in Europe, and compared to the States. So I don't know how many differences there were, but okay. Back in your day, they didn't have prom, but in my day, but now they do. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. I didn't go to prom, even though our schools had prom. I never went to prom. So 1992 in the UK. So you're you graduated in 1992. If you graduated in 1992, I graduated in 2003. So You're 11 years ahead of me. So, and we had very strict teachers. Yes. The thing is, in Europe, or in the UK, excuse me. In that area, on that side of the pond, the I've noticed because my family lives overseas. I know that the school system over there is a lot stricter, but yet at the same time, despite the fact that it's a lot stricter, people would the students would get a lot better of an education. Um, the education would be like awesome, like the kids would be really smart. It would be high school education would be the equivalent of what college kids would learn here, at least from what I understand. So, because in high school it was, depending on what school went to and what state was better or worse, but for the most part, um, high school, like I know that overseas in high school, the education system in terms of what the students would learn would be, one or two steps ahead of what things would be here. So I'm sure at the end of the day, the teachers might have been strict, but at the same time, the students would end up better for it. They'd be a lot better, more educated, and better. So it was in a comprehensive school, yeah. So it was kind of like a private school, you mean? Like it wasn't like a public school, or am I off base when I ask that? Because um, I got a lot of respect for for teachers. I kind of used to be one. So run by the local government. Okay, all right. I can respect that. I think that's kind of cool. I think that's kind of cool. It's like I really respect you know areas that do that, because at least here in the states, it's not really that common or whatnot, or it just seems to be getting easier and easier, and as well as the teachers as well. And I could go on and on, but ultimately at the end of the day, I was lucky for the most part that I had good teachers. Obviously I had some bad ones, but I was kind of lucky in terms of the way we were taught and the way I was taught. And especially since I also went to a lot of different schools, because I'll tell you, during middle school, which are 3 years, you guys sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. For sixth grade, I was in one school. For seventh grade, I was in another school, and again for eighth grade, I was in another school. So, and then in ninth grade, I was in two schools because I transferred from one to the other, and then throughout the rest of high school, I stayed with the one school. And then in elementary school, I was at two different schools. So except for, like, I would say that like high school was like the only time when I was the most consistent in terms of where I stayed in school. So it was like 3.5 out of the 4 years where I would stay at the same school in high school. And if you're a kid, that's very important, because you build relationships and friendships with people, and maybe even perhaps with your teachers, and with just the way things are. So when you're moving and when you go to a different school every time due to things that you can't help, it's kind of it's both yet educational, and yet at the same time it kind of sucks. But it is what it is. But I took it like it was, and I enjoyed whatever it was. So but yeah, throughout my school career, from first grade to 12, or from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, I had two, three, four, five, seven different schools. So uh, a lot of kids would have three. I'd say the majority of the kids would have three. One school for elementary, another school for middle, and then another school for high school. But when you move, I guess this is what happens. So, and yeah, Not Another Teen Movie was great. You know what movie is also awesome is Euro Trip. Have you seen? You must have seen Euro Trip. I know that. 5 years in comprehensive with mostly the same people and friends. Yeah, that's very important, George. That is extremely important. Like, especially as you grow and everything like that. Yeah, having the same people during that time is great. You kind of end up like family. Like, just before you came into the chat, I was saying that, like, on the last day especially, but as we were getting closer and closer to graduation from high school, there was no more, it's like everybody was on an even playing field. It's like we were all popular that day. we were we were all graduating, we were all on the same level. It's like all everybody that that was kind of mean to you or whatnot in the past would no longer be mean, or you would see another side to the students that you wouldn't see before. Because here in the States, like high school is kind of like a completely different world from the real world, so to speak. I guess kids kind of build upon that. And then obviously once you graduate, none of that means anything. Once you get into the real world out there full time, none of that means anything. Anything at all. So it's like, and the thing is, if you're able to uh you're able to you're able to build off of that. So I miss it, but at the same time it's like, I don't know. I keep asking myself if I would have done anything differently, but overall this movie was hilarious though. I mean, it hit all the right spots that it needed to hit. And I'm glad that you guys got to I'm glad you guys in the UK got to see this film, because because it's comedy, and it also shows you the way in terms of how things are here. It's but yeah, I miss those days. Things hit differently when you're a kid. When you're younger, you're like, it's like you're a kid for quite a while. You don't truly grow up into maturehood until years after high school. A lot of people don't realize that. Like, you're still very much a kid when you're in high school and beyond. So, and that was a really cool thing to see. Like everybody was like so friendly on the last day of high school. Everybody was the same. I remember the Marilyn Manson video for this being on a lot in MTV. Yeah, yeah, Marilyn Manson during our time, during the time that you know we're 11 years apart, but it was very interesting when you're talking about like let's say the mid 90s to the mid 2000s. It just hit differently back then, man. I i don't know what else to say other than that I missed the shit out of it. So it was, yeah, but I don't I can't really tell you what my favorite high school movie is. And yes, the 90s were great. I mean, I was in elementary and in middle school, but yes, the 90s were great, and I missed the shit out of the 90s. The 90s was my favorite time in everything. The 90s was my favorite time when I was a kid, like in my childhood, and even, it was better than middle school and high school, even though middle school was kind of part of it. But it was also my favorite time when I was playing video games. The 90s were the time. You and I have literally seen and lived during the era of the golden era of gaming. We saw the transition between the Nintendo and then the Super Nintendo, Genesis, and then, or what you would call in the UK the Mega Drive, um, Master Drive or Master System, I think is what it's known as well. Um, and then into the PlayStation era and everything like that. It just, the good old days, man. The good old days. I miss them. I truly miss them. It's We grew up in a very interesting year when it comes to games, man. I mean, we really did. And in movies too. In movies as well. Like, everything was just kind of starting out during that time. I miss having game nights with friends, having Pepsi and pizza. Hell yes. Now we're speaking the same language. I used to have sleepovers as much as I could over the weekends or during the summers, and it would be very common to be drinking sodas and eating a bunch of junk food and all that stuff. So, um, yeah, those were the days, man. Play the shit out of games, eat a bunch of junk food, and just enjoy, you know, like no consequences, right? You would do all that, and it's like no consequences whatsoever. So, those were the days. And this in this movie over here, I mean, he throws the ball and it hits her in the head just before she leaves, and oh shit. Can't imagine what going to the movies in high school must have been like. Again, it hits differently. No, it's not the same. You're right. It's all online now, and it's certainly not the same. No, it is not the same. It's kind of like, yeah, it is not. Uh, it really isn't. It's kind of like comparing the arcade experience to what we're getting on the online experience now. It's not the same. It is not the same. I would love, um, what, waiting for my turn? What do you mean? I mean, oh yeah, waiting for your turn to play in the arcades. Yeah, you put the quarter up or the token. Yeah, and on the controller. Yes, that's another one too. I have like I mentioned this in my top 10 favorite fighting games of all time or something like that video. I made a long video recently about the top 10 greatest fighting games of all time. Well, my top 10 greatest fighting games of all time list, and it was also a personal list. So, like the games that I never played or never got a chance to play would not be on that list. So it was all the games that I played, and I had my personal top 10. And there was one game, my parents actually, they and a whole bunch of other parents, they had like this big kind of dance slash uh get together that was like some sort of dinner, like a fancy dinner. It almost looked like a politician's dinner thing inside a big ballroom and everything. But inside that ballroom, there was like this little room, and lo and behold, I go in there, and there were the kids around my age of other parents, right? And there was this little TV screen and a Super Nintendo, and guess what they were playing? They were playing Street Fighter 2. And everybody would just share the controller. Like whoever lost had to give it up. So the local fast food shop had a bootleg Street Fighter 2 where you could do moves in the midair. Oh shit. Damn. Damn. Now that's cool. Now those are stories right there, my friend. That is cool. I love that. That is awesome. Oh, yeah. Street Fighter 2 is the greatest fighting game of all time. And spoiler alert, that's my number one. Street Fighter 2 was my number one. So, um, I really, it's like I want to talk about the top 10, but it's like I don't even know if I fully remember exactly what like what all the games were, like in what order at least. So, it was my number 10. Let's see. I spent hours eating fried chicken and chips, wiping my hands ready for my turn. Yep. Yeah. Who did you play as in Street Fighter 2? Who was your main? Or did you not have a main back then? And for anybody who's watching this afterwards, the movie's pretty much over at this point. But I'm still going to be talking here because George is in the chat and we're having a damn good conversation. So, um, Chun Li. Okay, yeah, Chun Li's and yeah, I could see that. Um, so yeah, so my number 10 was um what was number 10 was Mortal Kombat Deception was my number 10, which is a little bit of a hot take. My number 9, I believe, was Virtual Fighter 2. My number 8, I think, was Killer Instinct. My number 7, damn it. Now I want to actually go look back at the video and see what my number 7 and shit was. Um, I gotta highlight over it and see what it shows me, so that way I could tell you what my other one was. But yeah, Chun Li with that kick. I mean, it was the equivalent of Honda's slap, but it was that kick. It had range, and you could trap people on the corner and stuff. I remember that. Personal top 10 fighting games of all time. So let's see. It's not going to show me. But you know what I'll do? Actually, I'll just click on it and let's see what. I'm just going to hover over it. So, do you believe that Street Fighter 2 is the greatest fighting game of all time? So, Deception was my number 9. Okay, here we go. Deception was my number 10. My number 9 was Marvel vs. Capcom 1. My number 8 was Virtual Fighter 2. My number 7 was Killer Instinct of 1994. My number 6, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Number 5 was Mortal Kombat 9, or Mortal Kombat 2011, as I like to call it. My number 4 was Street Fighter 4. My Come on now. My number 3. Oh, my number 3 was Killer Instinct of 2017. My number 2 was Mortal Kombat 2, and my number 1 is Street Fighter 2. Yes, mostly people just use Blanca for his cheap electric shock move. Yes, if you were to jump towards an opponent and if they used the electric shock move, you were fucked. Yes, Virtual Fighter 2. I actually owned a Sega Dreamcast, which was something that not many people can say back in the day. In 1996, I'm sorry, not a Dreamcast. I did own a Dreamcast, but I wouldn't get that till later. In 1996, I owned a Sega Saturn. And Virtual Fighter 2 was one of the games that I had. And the Sega Saturn cost $100 more than the PlayStation, and it wasn't as good, but we didn't know any better back then, right? But it was still cool. I was a fan of Sega. Sega games were great. Still got my Dreamcast with Virtual Fighter 3. Yeah, I actually am very privileged to say that I actually owned every single Sega console. I had a Genesis, I had a Sega CD, I had the 32X, and I had the Saturn, and I had the Dreamcast. My Saturn was robbed when my friend's house was burglarized. Shit, that sucks. That sucks, man. Because the Saturn, although it may not have been quite as good, especially looking back at it now, I mean, back then that was gold. You know, it was a gem. It was a gem. It wasn't really popular either, but it was a gem. It was modded for playing imports. Damn, it was modded too. Shit. Ugh. Damn. The Sega Dreamcast, man. Shit. See, now you're giving me all these nostalgic feels now. Lots of good ass memories with good nostalgic feels. It was incredible, man. Those were incredible times. The Sega Dreamcast times, those were incredible times. I miss them. I miss them. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what games I had. I know there was a game, there was like a demo disc that came with it. And then um I owned Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. I had Sonic 3D Blast. I had I don't what else I had? I'm trying to think. Virtual Fighter 2, obviously. Panzer Dragoon was another one that I had. Um that was a lot. That was a lot. First time playing online with a console on the Dreamcast. Oh yeah, that's right. That was the first console where you could play online, wasn't it? And one of the games you could play was Quake. And you could play on the PC servers and everything, except you get your butt handed to you because there was no aim assist. And using a controller with no aim assist against mouse and keyboard players, you would get your ass absolutely handed to you. So that sucked. That I do know. But it was the first time you'd be able to play online on console. So in some ways, when you look at it that way, the Dreamcast was really ahead of its time. I was upset when my Saturn was robbed and I had the Panzer Dragoon games. Yes, I had one of the Panzer Dragoon games as well. I don't remember which one I had specifically, but yeah, Panzer Dragoon was cool. You know, this was back in the day when I played everything, and it was like I was a big fan of like those flight type of games and space combat games and stuff like that. I was a big fan. The only thing that I ever regret in my gaming career, in terms of, well, my gaming life, was the third is really expensive now. Really, like, yeah, there's still games to this day, George, that are extremely expensive, like right now. And what I mean by this is, like, for instance, for the Super Nintendo, if you want Turtles in Time, you're if you're able to get your hands on one, it's going to be either full price or more, like in terms of $60 or more. Just to name one game. There's a few other games as well, but like when you're looking at like some of the most popular games throughout that console generation, they're going to be worth a shit ton of money. A shit ton of money. It's insane. But at the same time, rightfully so, because like those games were just gold back then, man. Those games were just gold. You know, there's a reason why those games are as legendary as they are. That's why I make those retrospective videos. And speaking of which, I need to make retrospective videos about games that I haven't played. Let's see. All I have for my teenage consoles are my PS1 and N64. Oh man, I wish I had both. That's the only thing I regret. I didn't have an N64. I did not have an N64, and I wanted one, and I didn't have one. But peer pressure got me towards the PlayStation side. You know, I don't say that I regret it, but I wish I had an N64. I truly wish I had an N64. My eldest daughter loves Mario 64 on the old N64 controller. Yeah. Mario 64 was the first game to do what it did. It was the first game to do what it did, man, with the joystick control and 3D movement of Mario. Holy hell, man. Platformers became huge because of Mario 64. Every other game out there was trying to emulate what Mario 64 was doing. Like, it was trying to copy what Mario 64 was doing. There was no other game that did what Mario 64 did. Just no way. And it was supposed to be even bigger. It was supposed to be even bigger than what it was, but it still ended up being huge. So, in that aspect, you know, Mario 64 is probably the most legendary game on that system. Never had a GameCube? I did. Um, and I don't regret it either. Because, you know, I mean, I ended up getting an Xbox later on, but no, the GameCube was awesome. The GameCube was awesome. The only thing that sucked was you had those little mini discs, which were cool and all, but there was less data to go on them. And you know, sometimes every once in a while, you say to yourself, "What the hell was Nintendo thinking?" But at the same time, they just had a different vision and stuff like that, and it would take them a long time for them to perfect that vision and stuff like that. And they've had a lot of ups and downs, but ultimately, yeah, the GameCube was awesome. I played let's see, I played Mario Kart. Let's see, all of my friends got the PS2. Yeah, most people back in the day had the PS2, but at the same time, the Xbox really made a name for itself, though. Like, interesting fact: when I did the Halo Combat Evolved retrospective video, like upon the research that I read that I read out as part of it, you know, not just the experience, my experience that I did, you know, uncut, but when I started reading out the research, it's like more than half of the the original Xbox consoles were sold because of Halo. Like more than 50% out of the people that bought an Xbox bought it because of Halo. And then during the GameCube time, I think Luigi's Mansion was first made its appearance with GameCube. First COD I played online was the original Modern Warfare 2. Love playing Halo 2 multiplayer. Yeah, Halo 2 multiplayer put everything on the map because Xbox Live was released in 2004, and once that happened, it's like you didn't just have to go to your friend's house anymore and system link your cables and shit. And then there was the Xbox 360. Yep, people, even when the Xbox 360 came out, people would still play Halo 2 on the Xbox 360, and they really liked the controller. Like to this day, the Xbox 360 controller is the best controller out of everybody. Out of all the controllers that were ever made for Xbox, the Xbox 360 controller was the best. So, and the Xbox 360 was by far my favorite. Like in terms of all the Xbox, it was my favorite. All right, my friend. Yeah, and the movie's been over for a little bit now, so but yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know if I'm gonna do a new Comm or whatever I'm gonna do, but yeah, it's been really great talking to you too, George. Thank you for stopping by. It's one of the reasons why I do it live, in case anybody wants to stop by and start talking and say hello. Whenever I do a movie Comm, I love it. So yeah, I hope we can chat again, and hope you have a great day. And yeah, I'll catch you later, my friend. And to anybody else who was watching, thank you very much. I'll catch you guys later.